Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm joined by Jim Simonette, along with Stevie Mullen and Jim Watt. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us, Paul.
It's always a pleasure to have you in the studio to talk about Celtic. We're asking a few questions today. The first one that we're asking on the back of Shane Duffy, being our latest recruit, is this the best transfer window? Now, I think what I meant by that is in the 9 in a row era, because you could maybe go further back and say, well, I'll tell you what was a good transfer window, Stevie, when we stopped at 10. That was a good transfer window when you think back to that.
I think this is a great transfer window. If there's one or two going out the door, we could maybe supplement some defensive areas still to be covered. But I think overall, all over the park, we're pretty strong. It says to Geese earlier, we've got now 28 of a first team squad. Really, really well covered in midfield. Still a wee bit short, and again, this isn't any criticism of Greg Taylor, we're a wee bit short on the left side of the park, whether it's left back or a defensive sided midfielder.
See, when I look at the defence, I'm delighted Shane Duffy's come in first and foremost.
Aye.
I'm a wee bit concerned that we might ship somebody out, that someone being Ayer. I hope that doesn't happen this season. I actually don't think he's ready to go in terms of his development. He should stay at Celtic until at least the end of the season. Jim, you'll have a good knowledge of Italian football.
Aye.
Would AC Milan be a good move for Ayer?
I think it's maybe just speculation that he's linked with AC Milan. I think the thing Lennon said last week about players wanting to go and Ayer's agent reputedly coming back and saying name your price till we go and find a club. I think he'll certainly learn a lot from Mr. Duffy, that's for certain. But I don't know if it's a wee bit early for him, Paula.
Well, I think so. I mean, I've always been a big fan of Ayer, and I know that he divides opinion, and I hear it when I'm at the games, and I see it with the feedback that we get on the show as well. But I do think that if he was to stay, and I'm not just saying this for staying for the 10, for the benefit of that, I just think that there's been players in the past who have left too soon, they've left too early. Charlie Nicholas, for example, if you want to bring it kind of closer to the present, I think Liam Miller left too early.
But if we go and we lose another central defender, say it is Christopher Ayer, the now our defenders is Julian, Taylor, Boli, Frimpong, Duffy, Ayer, El Hamid and Ralston. If we lose one of our central defenders who's there, we're back to being short again.
Yes.
There's no cover.
No.
You've got probably a good four, but one of them gets injured, you're struggling for defensive cover.
And that's been my sentiment, Stephen, that what you've said there is we can pick all these midfielders, but we're still short at the back. And if you're short at the back, that's when you've got to have the options to be able to play people around, but you need this person to come in for the back.
Some comments coming through, and we'll pick through them because in actual fact there's loads of comments. There was a couple of hundred before we even started the broadcast. So thanks everybody for getting involved. Colin Watt mentions that it's still a good bit of work to go to make it the best window ever. Takes a lot to top O'Neill's first season. I'd agree with that. Good to see Premiership quality players arriving. Left back and right winger next, please. I think we do need a left back, but there's been a lot of discussions about the left back on this podcast over the last week or so. And I said to Jim yesterday that before playing the likes of Turnbull and left back, I'd play Bolingoli before I played somebody out of position. Now, and I mean that might be controversial. Bolingoli's still an asset to Celtic. He's got a 5-match ban.
Yeah, of course.
Lennon has come out and said he's not sure he'll play for Celtic again. Do you think time in relation to this, Stevie, time will be a positive for Bolingoli in terms of he might end up being back in that squad?
I think Greg Taylor's getting a hard time now, and I don't think it's all duly deserved. On a very personal level, I wouldn't play Bolingoli again for Celtic. When they sack him, I would manoeuvre a move away from the club, whether it's in loan or a permanent. I think we need defensive cover to supplement Greg Taylor, or, as I say, do we get a left-sided midfielder who's got defensive qualities? Because I think Greg Taylor seems to be becoming, same as James Forrest, a wee bit of a whipping boy for the Celtic fans just now.
I think he is.
Getting back to Colin's point about the outside right position, Darnell D mentioned 10 times about James Forrest's uniqueness about getting by defenders, which I think he only done once on Sunday. The wee boy Frimpong comes on. I thought he was outstanding. Some of the runs, in fact, he got the left back booked the minute 2-3 minutes after he was on. But I would like to see Steve says maybe a wee bit more cover at the left back position for definite as well.
See, when we're looking at the right back as well, then, just when we're talking about fullbacks, I don't think we're well covered there, because I don't reckon Frimpong is a right back. I think all his attributes are in an attacking sense, which leaves us with El Hamid, who I rate highly, and Alfie Ralston, who's disappeared off the edge of the earth. I think we need a bit of cover at right back.
If I draw Jim in this one, I think Billy McNeil let Paul McStay into the team at 17 years of age, because he said age wasn't an issue. He just couldn't hold him back. I think there's maybe some games, especially at Celtic Park, that I'd like to see young Dumbelli getting put out to the right. We're talking about bringing somebody in. I don't know if it's too young, Jim. Is he at 17? Can he do it? Or
If you're good enough, you're never too young.
That's what I feel.
So you're bang on. If you're good enough, come into the squad, come into the first 11. This is the opportunity for every player to be knocking down Neil Lennon's door.
It's just we see players coming to the club, and young Dumbelli's been there. We're all excited about him. We got a wee chance last year, but it'd be nice to see. I think there's maybe games that are made for him. What do you think, Stephen?
I don't think he wants to be at the club. And again, if you're looking for any sort of defensive cover, he's not going to give you that. And like, it's surely personal. I wouldn't have him anywhere near the team in front of James Forrest or Jeremy Frimpong.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I agree with that.
No, I'd like to see him get a chance.
I think the problem that we've got with Dembele is we had a wee discussion about him, Jim.
Yeah.
And there's a suggestion that he wants to leave the club.
Right.
Now, I don't think at 17 he's done enough to demand a first team place.
Again, it's maybe what these boys are getting told. Paul.
That's right.
Maybe about getting their told for an agent, or
Absolutely.
somebody's came and seen you at this tournament and whatever. Certainly, when he's got the ball at his feet, I've not heard anything negative about the kid. It's all been, and every Celtic supporter, I would say 90% of them are excited at seeing the boy player getting a chance in the team.
That's what we discussed a wee while back, Stephen. That I don't think he wants to be there. Agents turn people's heads.
Aye,
They follow him full of different promises here, there, and whatever. But it's not the agent that's stopping him from getting on the park. It's himself. It's him that's got to get himself on the park. But I'm with Stevie.
Agree with that.
I'm with Stevie. I don't think he wants to be there, and I think he's got thoughts to go elsewhere.
I've said that, Jim, there about James Forrest having a poor game at getting by the defender. What a fabulous goal. What an absolutely fabulous goal. And then hitting the post, hitting the bar in the second half. So we know there's things there in James Forrest's armoury that he can do, but it's good maybe even to change it a wee bit.
But we're no unique. There's a guy this morning for the academy, Chelsea, Samuel Illing Union, 16 years old. He's away to Juventus. So we're no unique that big clubs come and take your young boys.
Yeah.
There's somebody at Chelsea, one of the richest clubs in the world, and their guys are getting took off them.
These guys are hunting everywhere. Every club's hunting everywhere to go and take players. And the younger they can get them, the better. They're getting them on, they're helping develop them, and then they get the aim is to get them into their squad, their team, help them to get honours, and then later on make profit out of selling them.
Jim, I think Stephen had mentioned yesterday to me what I didn't know. The boy Hickey, the Bayern Munich deals fell through, and Bologna want to take him to Italy. Stephen was talking about, was it 28,000 euros? Or 28,000 euros a week. Now the boy can play, but that's fabulous, isn't it?
I know.
So if that's getting presented to you, and if we're going back to the thing about Dumbelli, I'm sorry I didn't know that there'd been rumbles that the kid would want to leave the club, but these guys are saying there's what we can get you a sign-on fee, there's what you'll be getting wages. He will definitely play you.
And the agent will have 2 or 3 clubs lined up prepared to pay that kind of money, Jim. The frustration for me is a guy like Dembele, we seen him fleetingly last season. We were talking about it yesterday. He was on the bench against Hearts for the Scottish Cup final the season before. So he's been there or thereabouts, making his debut in Europe at 16. And you think, well, the problem I've got with someone like Dembele, and this goes further than that, it goes to Tommy Rogic, it goes to Sorrow. If you're not in the first team, you're not playing, because there isn't a reserve side and you can't play development football.
We're saying it's kids, but agents as well, and
Yeah.
Jim will back me up with this, and Stephen. The boy Broto that was the goalkeeper with Celtic, absolutely outstanding. The following season he was away because his agent was greedy. Ended up sacking his agent because he was desperate to stay at Celtic. You know, there's so many guys. Ramon Vega came in, had an absolute outstanding season for us back down the road to England because his agents went, there's what you'll get.
I know.
I think it's time to trim the squad. I think
Well-
we need
well
to
said,
cut,
well
we need to
said,
cut some of them out.
Aye,
Well
definitely.
said.
We've got 13 midfielders now, and some of them aren't going to get anywhere near the team. So if you get rid of some of them, bring some money in, and go and buy somebody as a replacement who's going to be competitive for a first team squad.
Yeah.
We'll have a wee look at some of the comments coming through on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube as well. It's always welcome. It's great to see the comments flying in. James Downey via Facebook, we need another wing back or left back and a winger. I think, see, what I liked about, you've mentioned Forrest there, Jim, and it was
Sure.
great. It was great to see him scoring that goal because he has become the whipping
Not
boy.
only good to see it, an absolutely outstanding goal.
What a goal.
And I think, Paul, see when the boy scores the goal, the criticism of the last couple of weeks, I don't know if you watched him, he really let it go right out of his system. Jim, did you
didn't
watch
he?
it, Stephen? He was screaming when he scored the goal. A fabulous goal, but
Didn't you think that Forrest, there was an alertness and a directness about him though at the weekend that maybe we've not seen in the last few weeks? I think he wanted to get on the ball and make something happen.
well, you know, I'm saying sometimes I feel he could do better. They changed it. I think they have a player called Lammy that plays left back, Motherwell, where he's played the whole season. They put him into the middle and put the other guy out who was much more aggressive on James Forrest. I'll go back to him pulling down Frimpong and getting booked with that. So they changed Lammy. So people's opinion, you know, they know James Forrest can play. You know, the wee guy, is it Robinson, the Motherwell manager?
Yeah.
Brought Lammy in and put the other guy, the more aggressive guy, out to the left hand side. The only thing I would say about James Forrest, sorry Jim,
No, you're
was
right.
his second season under Brendan Rodgers. Rodgers sat with him and showed him the stats of what the team had produced, and showed him his stats, but he hadn't produced. Start the following season, I think he scored a hat trick at St Johnstone. One of them was a wonder goal. He had a great season.
Up at McDermott, eh?
Aye.
Yeah, yeah.
Aye.
That goal at the weekend there is one of the most important goals. That could be one of the most important goals of the season.
It's a great goal.
Yeah, it helped us. It's how he took it as well, Stevie. It was off his stride, and then he got his feet from under himself, and he took it well. But that settled us just before going into half time, and for there, I think that we'll look back and that goal is one of the most important.
Maybe it's
goals of the
just me
season.
personally, my frustration, because I've watched him do some wonderful things. Pace, goals, very, very important goals. And sometimes you're saying, "My, you know, James, come on. You know, listen, we're all the same. We all need a wee shake."
I looked at Forrest yesterday. Jim asked the question, and I'll say it again, and people may agree or disagree. I already think James Forrest is a Celtic legend. See, when we look back on this 9 in a row, the 3 players at the moment for me that are standing out: Scott Brown, James Forrest, and Callum McGregor. And I'm talking about the 9 in a row, not just fleeting appearances from the likes of Edouard or you know, Sinclair who had a couple of good seasons. The boy is going to be a one club man. He's going to play over 500, probably over 600 games for the club. He's going to be regarded and revered as a Celtic legend. The amount of medals and trophies that he's going to win as a Celtic player will be unmatched.
Sure.
You know, potentially. And I think that we do get on his back. What I love to see over the last couple of games is his adaptability to move from right to left. Because El Yunusi's, he's a bit hit and miss at the moment, isn't he? He played quite well against Ferencvaros despite the defeat. But then he comes on against Motherwell and he's almost anonymous again. We've moved Forrest over to the left and he's been brilliant cutting in on his right foot. So when we're looking at a winger, do we need a winger? I would like to have one, maybe who can adapt between the two. Listen, I'm not saying go out and sign Paddy Roberts. I know his name keeps coming up all the time, but that type of player
I think
who
we
can
can
play
chance
right
of Julia
or left.
Roberts, Paul, than Paddy.
Maybe in our day, Jim. But I mean,
She was a good centre-half.
Paddy Roberts, that type of player who can play right or left.
Aye.
And he's a creative type, because El Yunusi is blowing hot and cold. As you say, Forrest can do the same. Frimpong hasn't had a period of time where he's played 12 games well consistently. Right, again, he's been hot and cold. So I think we still need someone, but it would be ideal if he could play on both flanks. But does that player exist?
I think he exists, but he's way out of our budget. Again, football's a great game and everybody has an opinion. James Forrest will be a Celtic legend. And I'm going to go back to what it says at the weekend, and he can go back to Peter Grant. The Celtic fans don't fancy him much. 5 Celtic managers picked Peter Grant, 4 have picked James Forrest. You know, so we all say, oh, we trust the manager, he's got to decide that we don't like somebody, then they're wrong.
That's right. James Forrest, we said yesterday, Paul, it was 401 or 402 games he's played. He scored 90 goals. He's got the medals. He's got all the trophies that he's contributed to. Celtic legend.
The goal at Lazio was outstanding.
It's a legend.
Absolutely outstanding.
He's the type of guy, Jim, that, and I do expect, and I'm not taking this for granted, but I do expect us to progress into the Europa League group stages. He's the type of guy, if we are able to progress and you've got that important game like against Lazio, he'll pop up and score a goal.
Aye.
James Forrest will score a goal in about games, you know.
Aye.
And I think that when you're looking at his age, I know that he's not the type of guy who comes out on Instagram and does all that kind of stuff. He's not very vocal, but I think there's a common influence about Forrest, and some of the younger guys or the new recruits will look up to James Forrest as being one of the, obviously the senior pros now, which is unusual when you've seen him playing since he was a 17, 18-year-old himself.
But it depends if you're liked by the Celtic fans. I'm going to just bring in somebody else. The weekend, Jim said about Johnny Hayes and how I'd want to stay with Celtic. Nothing could be further from the truth. If I had 100 choices for a left back, Johnny Hayes would be 100. The Celtic fans.
Would he be ahead of Turnbull?
No. He was 3 years at the club. He won 8 out of 8 domestic trophies, 67 appearances, completed 90 minutes only 14 times and scored 2 goals. Then he played under Brendan Rodgers in the Champions League. And here's a bit what I don't like. Nobody in the squad gave the ball away more. Worst defensive errors in the squad. Nobody lost the ball more in his defensive third than Johnny. His 5.37 failed crosses per 90 minutes was the highest in the squad. His dribbling stats, expected assists and second assists were no replicated at Celtic out of the Aberdeen. He was a very, very lucky guy who was liked by the Celtic fans, and I put it a lot down to him being Irish. Nothing to do with his ability as a Celtic jersey.
You're probably right that he's liked more because he is Irish, Stevie. He won 3 league championship medals, didn't he?
8 out of 8, Jim, trophies wise.
Stevie's the president of the Johnny Hayes supporters bus.
I think what's annoying Stevie is Johnny Hayes is one of the best. We say the other day, the other legs, but well done.
Those statistics
so Stevie,
are
if I've picked you up wrongly about Johnny Hayes, you've proven me there that I did pick you up wrong. If you've got all the stats here, well done for that. But Johnny Hayes still, he's done a lot of good things as well.
3 good things he'd done at Celtic. He'd one cracking tackle against Rangers, scored a good goal, and jumped an advertising board at New Douglas Park to get a shy.
I remember that was a particularly good leap.
That's the 3 things he'd done positive in a Celtic jersey.
I take your point wholeheartedly, because I think there's other players who, if you were to produce the stats, would be particularly good, who are not fancied. So is Greg Taylor in that category? I don't know. I've not seen his stats. I'd like to see his stats. But I know that from last season, and by the way, it's tin hat time on, see Moritz Boyer as a defender, his stats were excellent last season.
But what I mean is, Greg Taylor's getting slaughtered for his attempt to crosses and cut out. Wish we'd kept Johnny Hayes. Well, Johnny Hayes was worst in the squad.
I know.
But because it's Johnny Hayes,
he's become
and the other wee thing, it's a wee bit cheeky. You tell Johnny to stay in the house when it was a team 40 day, wouldn't you?
Would you?
I know that feeling.
So that's us get 7 up to 7 now for Stevie, and the votes will begin out. You know, the beach ball, the stolen motor, and now that.
There's loads of good comments coming in. Gary Doonan, who gets involved in the bulletin on an almost daily basis via Facebook. Well done, Gary. The best transfer window, I think, Jim, you've already said this, is a transfer window where you win trophies.
Yeah.
So, you know, we await this season to see how successful it is, and we can maybe look back. I think in terms of transfer windows, I would go back to the 97-98 season under Wim Jansen. That was a particularly good window when you're thinking of the obvious one with Henrik Larsson. But there was a host of other players that came in, and then a few later on, because it wasn't windows at that time, was it? So I think Mark Reaper came in a wee bit later as well. But we had players like Craig Burley, love him or love him now. He was an excellent signing that season. Paul Lambert came in a wee bit later. Fantastic buy. You also had guys like Stephen Mahey and an important player that season,
Mahey,
Jonathan Gould. He was an important player that season as well. So I'd maybe say that was a particularly good transfer window because we had to stop Rangers that season, didn't we?
The centenary-year transfer window as well was brilliant.
Right.
Especially when you look at the guys we lost, Stevie.
But I think if you, what you said there, if it was this current 9 in a row, this is the best up to now, you know, on paper, you know, the guys have still got a lot to prove.
I think what I like about it is generally when we go through a transfer window, there's a few buys in there who you know is not going to get anywhere near the first team, right? And I think January back then with Klimala and Sorrow, for a decent outlay, there's 2 guys who weren't ready for the first team.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the players we've signed so far, the 5 players, every one of them, I'm not saying could walk into the first team, Stevie, because we've discussed Turnbull already, but they're first team players. They're guys who are going to get games in the first team this season. Every one of them.
They've got to be ready to challenge to play in the first team. They'll be ready to play next summer.
Yep.
You know, if, for example, somebody was injured, these guys can get in and you don't make a noticeable difference to the quality of your team. That's when you're ready. You know, get back to the wee guy, Lewis Ferguson. He's already played over 100 senior appearances. So if he was to sign for Celtic, he's ready to play and when he's needed.
Absolutely. And that, Stevie, this is what we've been saying. It's okay he's signing all these different players. It's got to be impact right away. Soon as they come, ready to go in the park, ready to fit into a position where we need them. So we're actually between us all, everybody out there as well. Soon as Shane Duffy comes, he's bang in there. He's banging at the back. But that's the way it should be, and that's what the man's. That's the point. The man's making the point of there. But the thing is, that's not happening. He's right. Stevie's right. The players that come have got to be able to go in right away, bang, and make that impact and make their impression. Make their impression on the fans by view at the moment, because there's no fans going to get in tap anybody's back because there isn't anybody there. So impression right away, impact, attitude, willingness to win and willingness to become a Celtic player and a Celtic team player. So Jim, bang on, Stevie.
I think what Stevie said, he's 28 years of age, Stephen. Duffy.
Yep.
You know, good talker, strong big centre half. I'll go back to Rodgers bringing in Toure and just getting us through into the Champions League. Just talking to guys, you know, that experience, it's going to be fabulous.
See, we go back to the very first show we done, Stevie. It was Stevie. It was the man sitting beside you, Shane Duffy. It was him that said it.
Aye, Stephen Saul.
I mean, I'd love to take the credit for that.
Aye.
But it was him that said it. So maybe we got it a wee bit wrong with the Johnny Hayes part there. But you did say Duffy.
Yep.
You
just his experience,
and then we all started looking at Duffy.
Aye.
So there it is.
Aye. It's great to get him.
Of course it is. Aye. But it's only great to get him if he's going to come on and be the impact player that we think he's going to be.
Well, we hope that. We all hope that. With a bit of luck.
As we spoke about earlier, Jim, before we come on here, you know, as Celtic fans, you think we can just go and take guys. When you're dealing with Brighton and Hove Albion, you know, you're dealing with Tony Bloom, a billionaire, you know, a professional gambler who's made all his life gambling. When he worked at Victor Chandler, he managed to convince Victor Chandler, who's a real person, to all the profits for the 98 World Cup, up into including the semi-final, to put them on France to beat Brazil. And they've done it, you know, so he's got a real powerful persuasion. You can't go and bully him into a transfer.
No, you can't.
So the transfer's been done at a time and suitable to Celtic and to Brighton.
It probably has, aye. It probably has,
But we've done well getting them in.
We've done well in getting them in. And Celtic has went down there and said, because they couldn't bully him. They have went down and says to Mr. Bloom, how much are you wanting for this guy? Wanting this. Celtic's probably thought about it and said, well, maybe can't afford that. Then I went back and forward. So both clubs have done brilliant to get the player. Both clubs have done brilliant. Celtic have done great to get Duffy, and let's all hope he is the impact player that we want him to be.
I think the other side of the park, Ayeti's beginning to look as if he's going to fit in. You know, he's in the box. He was the goal against Dundee United. It was his head that got back. He turned around to face the play, and it goes to the net. I'm not saying he's Henrik Larsson, but it's a wee start.
I think it's what we need
you know,
at the moment.
We need.
We definitely do. Yeah.
And again, that wee bit of experience. Somebody's been about a wee bit.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now Patrick Murphy via YouTube, the Celtic Lowell way will be to balance the books. If any club offers 15 to 20 for either Ayer or Encham, they will be sold. Let's get back to 3-5-2 and get a new left wing back in. I still think, even though we've had a good, and I think we've had a very good transfer window, I still think we're going to sell a first team player. And it sounds as though it might be Ayer. We've spoke about that, Jim.
The point Stevens made about thinning the squad, I think once England starts getting up and running again, that'll... I'm sure we'll see players leave the club. Is Rogic, is there something with Rogic going to the Middle East? I
think it's just an ongoing saga at the minute, but it's going to happen. They're talking about a fee of £4 million for him. And, you know, there's another comment in relation to Ayer from Failed Dossier. Big Ayer wants to leave, then let him. Sometimes it's worth turning a player round, and I think Lennon did that last pre-season, Stevie, with Encham, didn't he? Encham was making the moves to try and get, I think it was Porto that were interested last summer.
Again, you've also got the other thing this morning. Omar Colley's agents come out this morning and say Celtic have showed a definite interest. So, if you can get £20+ million for Christopher Ayer and bring him in, another great bit of business.
Yeah.
Is he with Sampdoria at the moment?
Yeah. You know, so I don't think we should hang our hat on any of these guys. You know, see if they don't want to be there, let them go. But we can't just keep bringing guys in and not let anybody go out the door.
You're
you know, if I was to read out the list of our midfielders now, you would be shocked.
Could I ask you, Stevie, do you have, and this is a genuine question, is Kundai Benyu in that list?
No.
Is he still at Celtic?
No, I think he's
I can't find him anywhere.
dismissed.
No. I've tried to find him.
This just came from the official Celtic FC website.
So he's not even on that?
So he's not in that.
He's gone. Now, Liam White, this is going back to one of the points we made earlier. I'd play Dennis Taylor before Greg Taylor. I think if you actually deconstruct that comment, right, has Greg Taylor really played that badly? You've produced some stats to show that Johnny Hayes wasn't a particularly good player for Celtic.
No.
If you look at the stats, I'm pretty sure Greg Taylor isn't as bad as what people think. There's a perception of him now, isn't there?
Again, if we go back to what we were talking about on Sunday, the guys were watching the show, that Greg Taylor had his two best seasons at Kilmarnock under Steve Clarke in a more defensive position,
Yep.
where he wasn't getting as much of the ball and he looks more exposed going forward with Celtic because he doesn't have the blinding bit of pace or the trick. But if you were going to look to play in a 4 with defensive cover, get something in front of Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor's probably a good wee player.
Aye.
See the thing, Stevie, it's a brilliant point. How often, prior to joining Celtic, was Greg Taylor in the top third of the pitch with the ball at his feet and people were expecting him to create something? Probably not that often. He's been a left back and he's doing a job as a defender. And then he's come into this attacking Celtic side and he's been expected. So there's going to be a period of him adapting as well, I would get. He's still young.
To be
he's
fair
still
to him,
adapting.
Paulie, 2 assists against Hamilton. 2 great
yeah.
assists, but the last couple of games, Jim, I think he's been trying to get the ball into a non-existent centre forward.
Do you know what
That must be hard.
Do you know what I'd like for the young lad? Is that he's got all this criticism that's floating about out there. I'd love him to take that and turn it right into a negative and become a better player and show the Celtic support and Scottish football that he's got it in his bag to become a better player. Now, nobody's actually saying here in this show that comment there, was his name Dennis Taylor? Was he a snooker player? Well, I wouldn't even say that comment, but everybody's got their opinion.
Sure.
We've said that in the past. He's a young player, he's a Celtic player. We can talk about him constructively, but I hope he goes out and shows that he can become a better player. He can become a better
You see
player.
any of the goals we've lost? Has it been a result of his defensive negligence? I don't think they have.
There was a wee criticism I think I made, but again, I'm probably splitting hairs a wee bit here, Stevie. The first goal against Ferencvaros,
Yeah.
which was a cracking
I
strike.
thought you would say that.
It was a cracking strike. But he's in an area of the pitch.
They all slept, Paul.
Aye.
They all slept coming out, and then
They
they
definitely
looked to the
did.
left, it went to the boy.
Aye.
They all slept, and Greg was part of that.
He was
But
part of
to
it.
say
He's not
responsible
solely to
for
blame.
was.
But his position in the set-up was to the right of the defence. He's the only one that's tried to make an effort to get across. We could have threw a blanket of the other 5 during about 80-yard box.
Exactly.
So I'm splitting hairs with that one. I don't think, obviously, he's been to blame. I don't think so. I'm with Jim on this, right? Know that I know the boy Taylor, but I do think there's a player in there. I think there's potential in there. He's adapting, he's still adapting, and he's not used to be attacking as much as he is now, Stevie. I don't think we've been overcritical of him on this podcast, but I think we've got to start considering the Bolingoli situation as well. Obviously, that happened. Everybody's just, criticising him as a person. We had a wee think about it. We then said he's still a person. The whole world's against him. That's going to be difficult for him to get through that. Neil Lennon came out. He didn't say for sure that he wouldn't play for Celtic again. As a club, they're maybe now look at him as a £3 million asset.
Yeah.
Is he going to be someone who Celtic will play again? I think that's a big question that needs to be answered.
I think the guys higher up than Neil Lennon will be making that decision regarding what he's done at the club, But again, it all falls down to injuries. If he's still at the club, somebody's injured, they're going to put him back in, without a doubt.
I'd put a midfielder back in there before I would play him. Sorry, the man is one thing, and the professional player is another. I'm with Stevie. I wouldn't. Sorry, Jim. I just would not.
What you and Stevie are saying may be
I wouldn't
right.
play him.
But again, we'll go back to what the caller said there about economics of Celtic selling players. It's certainly the case of economics that if somebody comes in, we have no Champions League money now.
I know.
So if someone comes in with 15 millions and 20 millions already, if somebody comes in and tempts with big money, we all know in our hearts what they're going to decide.
If one of these areas of the pitch, Stevie, that we've maybe identified, I said we've identified, it's only our opinion, we might need another winger, we might need another right back. If one of these areas of the pitch, you have the option to buy a player, but in order to buy that player, it means you can't buy another left back. Does that change your mind on Bolingoli? If you really want a particular right winger, right, but it means that you're going to push the boat out and you can't buy a left back, do you run with Taylor and Bolingoli?
If you were putting me in the spot about this, I would sell in Sham and finance the other deals.
Right.
I think he would be the most expendable.
Is he a luxury?
It shouldn't be a luxury. He should be bossing the whole club in midfield. He's got the build, he's got the physique, he's got the ability, doesn't seem to do it enough, and he's obviously not a first pick for Neil.
No.
So I think he's the most expendable out of your big assets in it.
And that covers a lot of different bases, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't quite fill the gap of the Champions League loss, but it allows you then to buy the 2 or 3 players that perhaps Neil Lennon's still looking at.
Yeah.
Now, some more comments coming in. Gary Doonan, going back to the transfer window via Facebook, in most recent times, the start of Invincible season wasn't big in terms of finance or numbers. Dembele, Gamboa, Toure, De Vries and Sinclair. So the biggest buy out all of them was Sinclair, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Gamboa turned out to be a bad signing in terms of the games that he played or didn't play. But you look back on that season, you think that was an excellent transfer window. The outlay wasn't massive, was it?
No.
Patrick Murphy. Jim, you're talking nonsense about Turnbull potentially playing left back. Apparently.
That's good, Patrick. You're right. You're welcome with your opinion. But what we're saying, it's an option. We're not saying to put anybody in at left back. We're talking options. So that could be McGregor going back to left back. If you are under pressure and you've nobody to put into that position, then you've got to look at every option to go into that back.
Didn't he play there against Copenhagen?
Sorry?
Back? Didn't he play there against Copenhagen?
Aye.
Left back, he drift back in.
Aye.
McGregor played left back against Cluj last season.
Oh, was it Cluj? Sorry.
Yeah. Dixie Normus says that Hayes was never going to make an impact at Celtic. Well, I think when we bought him, he was the outstanding player in Scottish football outside the Celtic and Rangers.
I was very surprised with
Liverpool. When Celtic bought up Johnny Hayes.
I only ever seen him playing well against Celtic. Any time I ever seen him playing against Rangers, he was anonymous in the games.
I would need to agree with that.
Now, Scott Graham makes a point in relation to Forrest. If he was to move to left mid, then El Yunusi could potentially move into number 8 or number 10 role, because that's where he played when he was at Molde, and then we might get the most out of him. What do you do with El Yunusi? The guy has got bags of talent. He's shown it in dispatches at Celtic, but not on a consistent basis, is it?
I think it would have to go back, Paul, to the wee discussion we had prior to the show, and you says you would maybe want to make a complete show of this about with the current squad we've got for your viewers to pick 3-5-2 and 4-4-2 with the players, and I think it would be really, really interesting to see the variations in the teams you would get.
Good shout, yeah.
Tony Cassidy's been in touch via Twitter. Stevie, the Roy Keane of a Celtic state of mind.
Cheers, Tony.
Okay, there we go. And Kevin Graham, who is well known to most of the viewers, is stating, I'm not wholly a fan of stats-based opinion, but that Neil Lennon trusted Johnny Hayes in big games for him says a lot about the player character, and sometimes he's that important.
14 games, 67 appearances, 90 minutes. Didn't trust him that much.
No, you're right.
But Brendan Rodgers didn't trust him at all in Champions League games when we went out the domestic.
And he signed him. He signed him.
You know, when you look at that as well, some people say, oh, he always gave 100%. Surely that's the prerequisite for any player. He always gave 100%.
Paul, go back to Johnny Doyle, God rest him. You know, I remember guys screaming at Johnny Doyle. Obviously, he was trying to fill the void of wee Jinky. There was a guy that he gave you 100%, but those just games that never clicked for him. But that's football, isn't it?
Exactly, it is. Now, Stevie, you did bring up Shane Duffy very early on a Celtic State of Mind several weeks ago. And I don't think I'd actually seen the news prior to you suggesting that he might come to Celtic. You've also mentioned Lewis Ferguson over the last few weeks, and there's quite a few comments coming in about Lewis Ferguson. My biggest concern there would be the fact that we don't actually need another midfield player. You've said yourself 13 midfielders. 13
midfielders, and I don't think some of them will get anywhere near the first team.
I agree with you.
So my basis of Lewis Ferguson is that I think if he's got 100 appearances at 21, we've got guys breaking through at Celtic at 23 and 24 who've played a handful of appearances. So he's ready. He's like the South American guys you bring in. They've played hundreds of games at senior level and they're just ready to play. He would be able to offer good competition for your midfield area and not just be a guy who's content to sit about. Do you want me to read the midfielders we've got?
Yeah.
Right. Beaton, Brown, Sorrow, Turnbull, Christie, Rodgick, Johnson, Encham, Elyounoussi, Luca Connell, McGregor, Forrest and Henderson. It's an imbalance of midfielders we've got.
We have, and someone's actually made a point about Mikey Johnson as well, because until you mentioned him, we've not even discussed Mikey Johnson. I think he must be about 4 weeks from coming back from injury. He's still to come back. This is from Sean Hill via YouTube. Hopefully we can get Griffiths back into the squad, left back, left wing back next in the transfer window. Happy enough. We have discussed Griffiths, and it's someone that no one forgets he's still at the club, but he doesn't seem to be anywhere near that first team squad, Stevie. Is he a player that Neil Lennon might look to move on?
I think Neil's one of his greatest attributes is his loyalty to his players. There must come a breaking point with your loyalty when you can't rely on these guys. That last week, we played a Champions League game without a forward. I don't know Lee Griffiths' personal situation, but surely if we have to depend on this guy, he's got to make himself available for these games.
There's another point coming in about Shane Duffy. Howard Roark via YouTube. If Duffy wasn't Irish, would there be so much hysteria about the signing? I think signing a player from that level of English football, and international, 28, when it's a position that we need to fill, I think that's why Celtic fans... The Irish thing you mentioned at the very beginning, I mentioned it yesterday. I do like seeing a couple of Irishmen in the Celtic team.
I think it's a bonus, of course. It's a bonus, but the big guy can play.
He can play, and that's the main thing. Gary Doonan goes on to say, Ayer at 21 or 22 has taken some grief recently. Anybody know how good Duffy was 6 years ago? Because he is a very accomplished player, Ayer, at his age. Sometimes we forget how young he is.
Point.
So...
Good point. But Ayer will never be a Shane Duffy type player. And if you're looking for a dominant centre-half, you're a dominant centre-half in your play at 21, 22 years of age. You can adjust your game to become a wee bit more accomplished. But if you've not got that determination, dare I say it, brutality in your game, nobody's ever going to put it in. And Christopher Ayer won't ever have the same attributes as Shane Duffy.
Now, I think the other day there, Kevin, and he won't mind me repeating this, because I did speak to him on a day about it, Stevie. He described him as a no-nonsense type defender. And Kevin went on to say that every time he sees him described in the press, that's how they describe him. Now, it's either lazy journalism or they're trying to suggest that he doesn't have much football about him. Because a no-nonsense defender, what does that mean?
Sure.
You win headers, you win tackles, you boot the ball at the park. Celtic have got ball-playing defenders in Ayer and Julian. And it might be a good balance to have a no-nonsense defender in there. But I don't think that's where Celtic are at the moment, to have that type of player.
I think the last time I was through, I spoke about Pat Stanton coming and making Roddy McDonald a better player, albeit one season.
Yeah.
But I think Roddy McDonald that year was absolutely outstanding, just with somebody next to him who could talk him through. The thing about Ayer being 21 years of age, I'm hoping Shane Duffy improves him through being able to speak, command, tell him where to go. I think it's a fabulous signing. And hopefully Ayer will progress, get better with someone like that beside him.
The other thing as well, Paul, you don't play that amount of games in the Premier League in England without being able to pass the ball.
Aye.
Now, he's not going to be a polished defender. He's not going to be Pirlo. He's not going to be Cannavaro. But he can pass the ball. He's not an idiot on the ball. He's maybe just not the most accomplished or polished defender. But he's not any slouch on the deck either.
And you're bang on with the amount of appearances, Stevie. He just over 200 appearances in the English Premier League.
Well, we got a few messages coming up from a friend of a Celtic state of mind called Spencer Vignes, who is a Brighton and Hove Albion supporter. He's written books about the club, and he reckons it's an excellent signing for Celtic and for Shane
That's
Duffy.
good to hear.
And for Shane Duffy. Because he said, he's one of these guys who may not be the perfect mould of this athletic footballer. He likes a few pints, he likes a night out, but not to the detriment of his performances. But that's maybe why he's not in the plans down there. He comes up here and he reckons he's going to do well for Celtic. So I'll take that from close quarters.
It's good to hear that from
absolutely.
one of the fans. Is Jim saying he's played 200 games down there, the guy's
100+ games.
Didn't he date Paul McGrath any harm having a few pints?
It certainly did not. He was one of the finest defenders I've ever
I
seen.
know why his career went downhill.
Hey, listen,
Have they mentioned the Savoy in there?
you can bring up Paul McGrath anytime you want on this podcast. I just think the guy was
Paul McGrath.
he was a genius. He was a genius footballer.
Great player.
When you read his book, Back from the Brink, you realise he should never have been a footballer with the upbringing he had, a really tough upbringing, and then obviously had his demons when he made it as a player. For anybody out there who likes a football autobiography, it's the finest autobiography I've ever read. Not just football, just generally. Back from the Brink. I would have loved to have seen McGrath in a Celtic jersey, Stevie.
That'd have been a better signing. That'd have been a better signing. Now, when you're a bit nostalgic one, guys at the end of the career just to come up and get a wee payday and say they wore the hoops, he'd have been a fantastic player for us.
Here's a wee story for you then. Tom Grant, Billy McNeill and Neely Mockin travelled down to Manchester to sign Paul McGrath. Right?
Wow.
They're meeting him in a do, some kind of do where some kind of player of the year dance or something, and there's Paul McGrath. By the end of the night, Paul McGrath is so drunk that he can't lift his head off the table. A form is passed over and he signs it.
Wow.
He signs the form. Obviously we never signed the player, but that's a true story that came from Tom. So Paul McGrath did sign for Celtic, but I don't think he was in a fit state to do so. But they did want to sign him. Big Billy went down to sign him.
What a signing would have been there?
That would have been a tremendous signing
Again,
at that
Big
point.
Billy went and got Gaza to agree to sign if Paul McStay would have left.
Is that right?
Yep.
I remember reading that in the Shoot magazine,
then
actually,
Paul
Stevie.
decided to stay, but
Right.
Gaza was coming to Celtic to replace Paul.
Was he? I remember when Italian football was on Channel 4, Jim,
Yeah,
you'll
that's
remember it well. And what happened then is a lot of people who maybe weren't interested in Italian football started showing an interest in
course.
it.
Aye.
Now, I'm a Celtic fan, but at that time,
I think
one of
that
the
was
guys...
the girl who was hosting the show, Paul.
Oh, was there? I'm obviously a Celtic fan, but you kept an eye on Gascoigne because he was a player that you knew from the English leagues, and you'd seen him at the World Cup in 1990, so you did keep an eye on him. And I remember him getting interviewed, and he was referring to Rangers as Glasgow. He says, "Yeah, I've been over speaking to Glasgow." He didn't even know they were called Rangers, So imagine he had signed. What was that when he was at Newcastle?
Yep.
Was it?
Yep.
As a young player. There you go.
That would have been a signing, and he would have been a fantastic Celtic player.
Absolutely, they've been wonderful.
It would certainly have
Again,
been.
as earlier on, not all transfers work out here. This morning, Tottenham are putting in Dombele back up in the transfer market. Their record signing last summer at 54 million quid just hasn't worked for them.
No, and you're right, Stevie. Sometimes when you sign somebody, it just doesn't work. If somebody goes to a new job, sometimes it doesn't work. It's time.
Without a doubt, Jim.
You know,
Aye.
there's just circumstances within there, and one of the great things in a transfer that happened with Celtic was Stillian, because that nearly never worked.
Yes.
But
that was lucky. Eh?
That was fate that did all happen. But he could have been away the next season. He was totally unhappy
about Shved coming
Aye.
after what we'd seen, and it's, as Stevie says, it's just no worked.
Doesn't work.
You know, he's in Belgium.
This is the thing. Now, I'm glad that Danny Martin, 23, has brought up reports that Ncham might be on his way, because the report yesterday is that Southampton are interested.
Yeah.
Now, some people have mentioned the fee. The fee that's been quoted is a substantial one. And I think that some Celtic fans have been saying, well, you know, if you were able to get that kind of money for him, and it's £20 million, that's not a fee, that's not came from me, that's a reported figure, then, you should sell him. But I think what we should all realise is if you're selling to the English market, then £20 million should be the absolute minimum for a first team player that you're selling to the English market. We've seen it before. Tierney went down there for 25. If he has a good season for Arsenal, what value will he have?
But I think with Ncham, Paul, if you're going to sell him, you need to sell him in this transfer window. 2022, you get him next summer, then he's only got 6 months before he can sign a pre-contract. I think you need to cash in just now if he's going to go. If he was going to sign an extension, then great, you can start building plans that he's going to stay at the club. If there's no any indication he's going to do it, I think right now is the correct time to get rid of him. That's the wrong terminology, to sell him.
Yeah, if there's an asset you need to sell of the three that have been mentioned, Ayer, Ncham and Edouard.
He's been a player that's been outstanding in some games.
Yep.
Against Anderlecht, the first 15-20 minutes, you'd thought it was his first time in a football park, and then he sets up Kieran.
That's right, couldn't he pass the ball, Jim, could he?
No, sets up Kieran, who puts it into Griffiths, and all of a sudden, just one pass.
Yep.
That one pass where he maybe just get back into the game. You know, Stevens played at a good level, he knows that's what happens.
Would you like to keep him, Stevie?
If he was going to sign an extension, if he's not getting any indications that he wants to sign an extension, then I would allow him to go in this window.
Aye. But you would like him to stay if he's signed an extension?
But again, as I say, we've got a wee bit of... Again, are we going to go back where these guys who were called last week agitators, are they going to stay? I think we should... How do I say this correctly? We should introduce what's called a Judas pig. Do you know what a Judas pig is?
Tell me.
Pigs in general are very, very clever animals.
Yeah.
Right? So when they're going to the slaughterhouse, they squeal when the pig. So the old farmer will have a pig. It's an old one who'll go and sort of give them the nod, everything's all right, and they all calm down, they go to the slaughterhouse. So see all these guys who are agitating, if they don't want to, we should stick the old Judas pig in there and get them all out the money.
I've never heard that saying before. I'm
actually hungry now.
I was actually thinking Jim Leishman yesterday with the coup all the time. It's gone to the slaughterhouse. They will get him with the pigs.
2 days in a row we've been talking about slaughterhouses.
Excuse me for smiling, but I actually got smiled.
It's the last rolling bacon I'll have.
That's a Judas pig.
Right,
there you go.
I'm the same as you. See, they don't, but equally, see, they don't want to be there. You've got to say on you go as well. So, I like the terminology there, but I've never heard that
talking with
before.
Ryan as well, haven't they? They've put the contract in front of Ryan, the extension in front of Ryan, and I don't think anything's come back through that.
See the big thing with that, Jim? I interviewed John Hughes, must have been 2 months ago now, during lockdown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And he was talking about Celtic need to get that contract sorted with Ryan Christie. This has been an ongoing issue for a lot
I don't
of
even
time.
think they've had a response from what I'm led to believe.
Does he want to stay?
That I don't know, but I don't think they've had a response.
His
So
father's
I can say.
indicating that he would like to go and play in England.
His father's indicating that all different teams are looking at him. They could go and do this and do that.
Spoke with Stephen, he'd been out at Aberdeen and spent the time at Inverness, so you know he's you sort of run out of time to earn big money,
Yeah. No, you're right.
and they're just human beings after all.
Now, looking back to the left back position, Kevin Graham, I would have Taylor and Hayes before Bolingoli any day of the week. Sometimes a solid 6 is what a coach needs. Now, I think back to a time where everybody was changing their Twitter handles to Bolingoli. He was the flavour of the month for a wee while.
Without a doubt.
Paul, sorry, can I ask you a question? What is a solid 6?
6 out of 10. Performer. Average performance every game. That's what I take from that. You do want consistency, but I think it's going to come down to finance. Like you say, Stevie, if we sell one of the guys we've mentioned, Encham, simply because we've got so much cover in midfield, would be my guess, and you can cash in on that. It might not be an issue, but we might be going into October, November only having one left back, one recognised left back, and then Bolingoli becomes part of that squad.
That's it.
So, I mean, it sounds ridiculous after what's happened.
And if the recognised left back gets injured,
you've got to play him.
Aye.
I think the guy
change the whole formation.
I think the guy who could cure both problems defensively and if you want somebody to sit in front would be Barry Douglas. I think he's an easy fix if Taylor's not to play, if he's to play left back, or if he's just to stand one in front of him. He's got a lovely left foot and a wee bit of defensive capability.
Daniel Leach makes a point via YouTube. Encham will probably join Musa at Lyon. Lyon are interested. Imagine he did.
Wow.
And you've got Dembele and Cham and Denayer all playing for Lyon. I think it gives you a glimpse of what could happen if Celtic were able to retain all their top players.
Aye, been great. But I think part of the reason, and Stephen and I have spoke about this now, it's the game now. If you're saying to these guys, come and get a window of maybe a season and a half, 2 seasons, and if the money's right, we'll let you go. I think that's how we're getting these guys to the club.
You're right.
And that's not just us. That's every club like Celtic.
We're using that. So when it happens, Jim, you've got to accept
We're
it.
a very, very high profile club compared to many. Worldwide support. So if the guy's agent's saying, get to this club, get a good season with them, 2 seasons, then we'll get the move. I think that's just part of what we've got to accept.
Sam Hamad, thanks for getting involved, Sam. You made a point you're lucky to get 10 million for Encham. My counterpoint to that would be the days of Celtic selling on the cheap have got to have gone by now. I mean, you look at what we got for Van Dijk and what happened with Van Dijk. Wanyama's another example.
Aye.
You've also got Dembele, who I've just mentioned. If Dembele leaves Lyon, what are we talking transfer fee wise? Same with Tierney at Arsenal. We can't sell a first team player like Encham for £10 million.
I don't think we should put ourselves down. And it's nothing to be going against what Sam said. He's entitled to his opinion. Matty Cash is leaving Nottingham Forest for £15 million, and Cham's twice the player that Matty Cash is.
Mm-hmm. Stephen T, this goes back to a point again, Stevie, that you've mentioned about Barry Douglas. Stephen T reckons that he's injury prone lately and 30 plus too much of a risk. What are we talking here if we brought him in? I mean, would it be a loan deal? Would it be a permanent deal? What kind of transfer fee would we be talking?
I think you would probably be able to get him in loan.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to pay big money for somebody that's injury prone. But again, it's not something I have at hand. How many games did they play for Leeds United last year? Is it only a recent thing that he's maybe picked up a few injuries? Because, we're talking about James McCarthy yesterday. Again, your thing was going off the radar yesterday. How many games has he missed? How many games has he played? Mm-hmm. And again, is it worth the risk? Is it value? Or do you go and buy somebody to play that position?
Are we right in thinking the end justifies the means for this season? If you're bringing someone in, as Stephen says, a year loan, just the ends justifies the means. We all want to get to 10.
We want to get to 10, but again, we were talking about this, you've got the Europa League to think about, and I'm confident enough that we're going to get to the group stages of that, Stevie. We've got our domestic treble to look at, and you've got a Scottish Cup from last season.
Yeah, 100%.
5 tournaments.
Aye.
So you're right, if you getting someone in to fill a gap for 12 months, and for the time being, we forget about the 3-year plan, etc. With some players, not all players, because obviously Turnbull's been brought in with a lot of potential. You're looking at some of the signings we're making. Ayeti, if he has a couple of great seasons and he becomes the star man, there's a sell-on value there. But 1 or 2, I mean, Duffy being the case in point, is there a loan? Is it a loan to buy deal with Duffy? I'm thinking it probably is. The negotiations were going on for some time. He's 28, not the type we would normally buy at that age. So you're maybe right there, I think, Jim. 1 or 2 players coming in, just as you say, for this season.
Stephen said earlier, there'll be a thinning down of the squad. for simple economics. For that reason, that's just because we exist as a business, and everybody will be the same. There'll no be a club in Britain that's any different. But I think just this year, you know,
this year's important.
Yeah.
But a wee thing on Ferguson, and Stevie's backing Stevie here. If we get somebody like Ferguson in as well, and we've got Turnbull, there's the makings a good pairing in there for going forward.
Aye, and at a good age.
And at a cracking age.
Yeah.
I think that would be quite good. Hopefully with a long-term McGregor in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a no bad wee three in there. But on the Barry Douglas, I'm just checking again, Stevie, 42 appearances, Leeds United, he's 30, but again, he could do a wee job in there for us now.
I think he'd go back to using an old word, Jim. We need a few stalwarts this season.
Aye.
Yep.
You know, just old heads to carry us through some difficult situations, because not every game's going to be pretty.
No.
You know, so we
Going
just
to be
need these
ugly,
guys to carry us through. You know, a wee bit of determination and a wee bit of know-how. And you go down the road, you've won one.
And that's what we've said. We've said in the show in various weeks, some of this season is going to be ugly.
Jim, go back
it's going to play ugly.
He's just said to Toure, come up, help us, try and get us into the Champions League.
Yep.
That was all achieved.
And again, one of Brendan's great things when he was talking about Callum McGregor, he says when he first came into the club, people would tell him all the things Callum couldn't do. He says, but he concentrated on what he could do, and his job was to complement him with somebody playing beside him who could do the things. They need a partnership.
That's bang on, and Stephen, that is good, and that's refreshing to hear that as well, what you've just said, because too many people tell people what they can't do rather than what they can do, and what by doing what they can do, they can achieve better. By that, you go forward, and your limitation becomes is no limitation.
Aye.
You can be motivated to become better and better and better. So let's just go back to young Taylor again, young Greg Taylor. So there we are. Come on, son. Let's get you motivated. More than what you are. Work in your game. Work on your sending the ball into the box. Work in other parts of your game, and you'll become a better player and come and be embraced by everybody. So that's very important, Stevie, that tell them what they're good at and work on
He's
what
playing in a
they're
better
maybe
team.
no good at.
He's playing in a better
course he
team.
is.
He's came for a team who are defending 70% of the time, a team that are attacking 90% of the time.
Aye.
You know, the boys adapting
Exactly.
to that.
He
Yeah.
will adapt.
Yep. And obviously his backup might be Bolingoli, but that's another conversation.
Aye.
Stevie, we had a good wee discussion about the SFA's disciplinary panel.
Yep.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, as everybody in this room knows, I'm a massive fan of Peter Lawwell.
Yep.
But I think we've been a wee bit distant on this, and I think we should be a wee bit more outspoken. I think the injustice in the discipline system in Scottish football, and two recent examples were the punishment to Boli and the Aberdeen players. Boli got 3 matches with immediate suspension and 2 suspended. The Aberdeen players were 3 matches, but will only be invoked if they break the same regulations they were charged with. An example 2, Yozo sent off in pre-season game, 2-match ban upheld. Ryan Kent sent off in pre-season, hee-haw. So I'd like us to challenge these decisions, and because again, a lot of Celtic fans won't really be that upset, I don't think, because it's Boli Bolingoli and they're no great fans of his. But it could be a more high profile player, and then I think it's an injustice.
It's inconsistency
That's exactly what
at
it
its
is.
highest level.
Yeah. What would the club, do you think? You know, I think back to the days of McCann, Stevie, and you just knew that any injustice would be fought to the nth degree. What do you think the club would do, looking at these 2 examples you're providing today?
I think they should take it up with him, maybe privately. Again, we were really, really missing Paul McBride in situations like that, who probably even took it upon himself to act on it. But I think we need to take it up, and then if we don't get anywhere, make it public and say this is what we've tried to do and this is the response we've had. Because I don't think we can just accept it, because in this season of all seasons, during the course of this season, something will crop up and manifest itself that's going to try and derail our 10 in a row. So if we don't nip it in the bud, with sort of simple examples, then we might find ourselves in a dogfight that takes a wee bit focus off the 10 in a row.
The one with Kent's just, I just can't understand the one with Kent, how he gets away with it. Can't understand it. As you say, was it a too-much ban?
Too-much ban.
Too-much ban.
But he has got away with it. And Stevie is right. I'd like to reiterate what Stephen said as well. I like Peter Lawwell. I like what he's done for us. And over the period, I mean, you look at it, he's been a chief executive that's been stubborn at times. He's wanted to do things his way. He's done good. Maybe not got everything right, but we still back him. He's just like the manager, just like the team. We back him to the hilt as well. Well, he's the chief executive. We back him. We might not agree with everything he says or does, but we back him. What the SFA, Stevie, it is quite hard to comprehend how they're taking the Celtic player. And maybe the severity of it is that he left the country, but the other guys know to get a disciplinary suspension as well. Up that just doesn't sit right, does it?
Jim, if I can go back to Fergus taking Farry back to court. Stephen knows this case. I kept the front page of the Glasgow Herald. That case took 6 minutes in a public court. 6 minutes. When Celtic, there was 3 investigations that all passed Farry, 3 internal SFA investigations, and they all passed Mr. Farry for holding back George Cadetti's signature. When it went to a public court, it took 6 minutes. The QC representing, I keep saying Rangers, but it's SFA, asked to approach the judge and withdrew his services, saying that his clients had withheld documentation and paperwork from him. They had lied to him.
Yeah.
Their own QC, the SFA's QC, withdrew his services. So you're dealing with an association that's been found to be wanting. You know, we were told, Hugh Keevins tells us how great a man Farry was. That's what he done. 6 minutes in a public court.
Absolutely. And I do agree that there's been issues for generations all around the SFA and their treatment of Celtic. However, William01 on YouTube explains that the reason Kent never got disciplined is because the French FA never reported the offence. So on that occasion, that could explain that one. But I think in terms of the coronavirus breaches, it's something that needs to be looked at. But as you say, Stevie, and I brought up Bolingoli the day, it's like a bad word. I'm not allowed to say maybe Bolingoli will be a left back. The Celtic fans...
But you're entitled to your opinion.
Well, it's for me though, Jim, I just think that the boy done wrong. He's now been punished. Once the 5-game ban is up, Neil Lennon and Celtic will need to decide whether or not he's going to play for Celtic.
Aye, but you're entitled to your opinion, and we state everybody else that's part of the show, they're also entitled to their opinions, and that's what makes it a show, and hopefully that's what makes it a good show. It's like me saying it's an option for left back. I'm not necessarily right, I'm not necessarily wrong, but that's just my opinion. If I want to drop somebody in for left mid, for the midfield into a left back position, that's my opinion. But it doesn't need to happen. It doesn't need to happen that Bolingoli becomes the left back. It doesn't need to happen, but you're entitled to your opinion. And it's great that all these opinions are coming in and it's open for debate. I think what Stephen said earlier on there as well, Paul John, is give us your formation, fans out there, give us it in, your 3-5-2, your 4-4-2, or whatever formation, 5-4-1, whatever formation you just want to give us, get it in, because I think that's a fantastic debate, just like the one Stephen brought up about songs being sung. So it's a show open for the fans to get in their views, and the one just now is the team lineups. I'd love to see them coming in.
We'll have an entire show discussing that, Jim.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had loads and loads of comments today via Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. The fantastic panel has been made up of Jim Watt, Stevie Mullen and Jim Simonetti. And we've got one or two other points to go through before we wrap this up, but it will be getting wrapped up in the next second or two. And I think what's interesting is Sean Fox on YouTube states that Boli left the country, the Dons players were only in the pub.
Still breaking the rules.
Still breaking the rules. John McCauley counters that by saying Boli tested negative. The Aberdeen players didn't. So it's one of these ones that.
But if you're doing a correlation, if he gets 5 matches, 3 immediate, 2 suspended, surely they should get 1 immediate and 2 suspended. You know, they really escaped scot-free for that.
I know.
You know, they get 2 club games postponed, the same as Bolingoli got 2 Celtic games postponed, but they didn't really receive any punishment unless they break the same regulation again. That makes no sense to me.
No, I'm with you, Stevie. I'm with you. Now, we've had some excellent guests on. A state of mind as well as a Celtic state of mind. Big Jim Leishman was in yesterday talking to us about his illustrious career. And we're recording the Salt and Sauce show tonight, which is non-Celtic related. So you can catch up on Friday as to who the guest is going to be. Jim, anybody else interesting coming in this week?
Yes, we've got Graham Diamond from Clyde Football Club and Danny Lennon from Clyde Football Club coming in to be on the Celtic Bulletin on Friday. And from there, they will then do an independent interview on a state of mind regarding Clyde Football Club and football in general, and that'll be quite an interesting. That'll be quite an interesting day. 2 good guys coming on the show, and I'm looking forward to the weekend as well, where you've got Edgar.
Edgar Summertime. He's coming up from Liverpool. He has played with the likes of Paul Weller, Johnny Marr, Laz, Ian McCulloch, Ocean Colour Scene. He's coming up for a live interview on Sunday. He's going to be playing an acoustic session and doing a DJ set. So busy day on Sunday.
Fantastic.
And you'll all love it. So thanks everybody for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thank you.
Here we go.